Good day. Welcome. This is your Daily Med with Lady V. Today we want to look at a passage in Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 and 28. Jesus teaching on adultery. And we will see that Jesus is trying to say to us that adultery begins with a lust in the heart, and that lust can destroy the soul. So lust must be dealt with quickly, because when the soul has a continuous longing, it will cause one to act upon that which the mind is thinking, if at all possible. So this is a state of the heart, what is going on in the heart, and it is as deadly as the act itself. So Jesus addressed the root of sin, which is evil in the heart. And the remedy for this evil in the heart is the cross, that which Jesus Christ did for us. When we look at Exodus chapter 14, it simply says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." We look at Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 18. It is repeated, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." But what does Jesus say? Jesus says, the law says you shouldn't do the act. Jesus says you should not even think about it. Don't think about the act. Because if you look on a woman and lust after her with such great intent or intense sexual desires, the Bible says you have already done the act in your heart. We'll also see what 2 Peter 2 and verse 14 says. But we will look at Matthew 5:27 and 28. It says, "You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." So here we see the Mosaic law clearly prohibits adultery. Exodus 20:14 and Deuteronomy 5 and verse 18. And somebody might say, "Well, I am proud that I have never broken the commandments of God." Yet such person might have their eyes filled with adultery. The Bible tells us in 2 Peter 2 and verse 14, "With eyes full of adultery, they never stop sinning. They seduce the unstable. They are expert in greed and accursed broad." So the Bible is saying that this sin actually takes place in the heart when there are lustful eyes. While outwardly being respectable, if one's mind might be constantly wandering down the path of impurity. So Jesus reminded his disciples that mere abstinence from the physical act of adultery was not good enough. He was saying there must be inward purity. He says, yes, the law had forbid the act of adultery, but Jesus forbids the very desire. He says, whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So if one think or act adultery, one does not just satisfy the sex urge. Such one is pouring oil on a fire to quench it. And it doesn't happen that way. Sin begins in the mind. And if we nourish it, we eventually end up committing the act. James 1 and verse 15 tells us, when lust hath conceived, it brings forth sin. And sin, when it is finished, brings forth death. So Jesus wants us to heed his warnings. Let us have pure hearts, because when impurity starts to be in the heart and one acts upon the desire, it could be any sin to include adultery, one will end up acting out that which they are seriously thinking, continuously thinking, having a longing for in the heart. So God bless us as we heed the teaching of Jesus Christ and stay away. Let our minds be pure, our hearts be clean, and we will stay away from these sins, to include adultery, that will be constantly in the heart, because that's where the root of sin begins. God bless you. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for your kind support. Please like, please subscribe, please share, and please remember to visit my YouTube channel, Daily Med with Lady V.